My name is Paula Mirabal. I am from Taos Pueblo, New Mexico. My village is the northernmost, longest occupied pueblo of that state. We are called the Red Willow people. And yeah, my grandmother was Nettie Lujan. My grandfather was Alfred Lujan.
My name is Urie Ridgeway. I'm with the Nanacoke Lenni Lenape Tribal Nation out of Bridgeton, New Jersey. My community, we're very fortunate. We come from 3 communities, one community in Bridgeton, New Jersey, one community in Cheswell, Delaware, and another one out of Millsboro, Delaware. We continue to exist today, but in the process, we lost a lot of our language, a lot of our culture. We had to learn, rethink and relearn who we were, and so we could adjust and maintain our communities. But we're thriving, and we're still exist here. Yes, there are still natives that live in New Jersey.
Yay.
We are still here. We are still Lenape people living on our traditional ancestral land, which many communities can not say that. Mm-hmm. We live right off the Cohansey River. The Cohansey River is named after Chief Cohanzic, one of the chiefs of the people that sold the lands in 1688 was when our lands were traded off between the Cohansey River and the Morris River. You go through our history, they speak of one of the families, the Mosley family, they resided in Cape May area traditionally, and then when the settlers and stuff came in and started closing in onto them, they took the whole community, packed them in canoes, paddled across the Delaware Bay over to Indian River to live with the natives and the Nanacoke people that were living on Indian River. So our communities, they would go back and forth, and they would use that, they would navigate across those waterways just to visit our families.
We have what we call Urie. It's Blue Lake. It sits in the mountain of Wheeler Peak, 14,000 miles elevation. That's where our water comes from, that runs through the middle of our village. And we do an annual pilgrimage to that lake to reacquaint ourselves, ground ourselves. Our lake is just restricted for us, tribal members only. We occupy about 50,000 acres of land only. That's our reservation.
We have 2 different
That's what I wanted to-
contradicting
Yeah,
worlds.
exactly.
I wanted
You're
to ask
12,000
you.
feet up,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
we're right at
Yeah.
sea
Right at-
level.
yeah.
You have the lakes, we have the rivers. It's
Yeah.
just
They have
two
50,000.
opposites.
They have 50,000
And
acres.
we have 50. So,
Yeah,
Right,
we
so-
have
But the significance isn't any different. The history of your people and what you've been through, it's so different from region
Yeah.
to region. I mean, the East Coast Native people have had a completely different experience than the Native people of the Southwest.
Yes, at one point in time, we lost all of it. All of that land. The Forest Service, U.S. Forest Service, just planted a little cubby, kind of like a structure, and said, this is ours now. And so they took over all of that, which included the lakes that are up there. And that happened in 1906. And from that point on, we fought and fought and fought. All the elders of my community, and my grandmother was a part of that, fought to get the land back, along with the use of that lake, to make it just for us, because they wanted to pay us for that land. And it was our tribal leaders said, we can't, what are we going to do with that money when the land is actually what keeps us alive? Our land is how we survive. We hunt, we gather, we grow. That's our livelihood. That's our life. That's our life ways. That's our blood.
long before this country was even formed, that's when they gave away our lands. They set aside lands for us, for the what they call Unagastago people, or that's just a subset of the Lenape. They set aside lands for them, and there's a town called Dividing Creek, which is, of course, a creek. And from the south side of that creek, that was considered the Indian territory. And the other side was for those that were during their hay field, their salt hay fields, and all the farmers and stuff that were coming in. And so those lands were separated at that point in time. And since then, goodness, we've pretty much sold off our lands. But then what took place was you had people like my wife's great-grandfather, she was just told this story recently about how he had pretty much nothing. But he got on the fishing boats and the clamming boats, and he went out and started fishing and clamming those rivers and the streams and the oceans. And he came back and he said he had no shoes, just beat up clothing. Well, he was able to buy his first piece of land. And then from that, he went out and kept doing this, and he bought another piece of land.
Wow.
Then he purchased another piece of land. Before you know it, he had enough where he was able to finance other tribal people
Nice.
from the community. They can go to him, and he would sell land and get land for them. And before you knew it, we had that land base back. So I said, completely different worlds we have here.
Yeah.
But one thing in common, we all lost our land that we
Yes.
that we need back, that we want back, that we have
It's our
that connection
grounding.
to. Yes.
Yeah, it's our grounding.
Without it, you don't exist.
Exactly.
You know, everybody hears a story of Mother Earth, and that's true in our language. We call it, it's our Mother Earth that we have, and the term in our language is haki, is that the earth. Well, actually, it's called the body, because we believe the Mother Earth is a being, it's a living entity, it's a spirit, it's a manitou, you might want to say. It's a living spirit, and haki is the body of that spirit, and that's your Mother Earth. That's the spirit's body itself. But the thing is, there's no difference between the term for the earth that we have as a body, and haki is also our body, because we are one and the same. And then we have the earth that is our mother as well, and we care for her the same as we
Right.
would. And without her, we do not have that life.
Exist.
Yes.
We're born into it. Our first language is Tiwa, and the language is what keeps us tied to where we are. Everything that we talk about is through the language that connects us. It's like all the words, the sounds that are made connect are like veins that connect to who we are as people. And with that comes with the knowledge of how we came to be where we're at. Those are our origins, to the lake that we go to the buildings that we live in, to the land that we live on, to the earth that we plant in. I mean, everything is connected to us. Without it, like you're saying, we wouldn't be there. But in all of what we do, that is the connecting line, is our language. Then within our community, we have a governing system where we have the governor of the village, and then we have a war chief. And the war chief is him and his group. They protect the land. They travel the boundary of all the land and make sure that we don't have any trespassers. So because we are originally an agricultural community, we really try to make sure that our waterways that come down, we make sure that all of the rivers are clean of garbage or of any overgrowth or anything. We always, we have a group of people that always do that, keep that clean, the waterways clean. And part of that is being able to grow our own corn, because we use that for everything that we do within our community. Our tribal ways, our comings together and our kivas, all of that, we use the corn.
Today, it's very hard for us to even gain access to the waterways, because everything's owned by non-tribal members and non-community. So if you're trying to get access, you need special permissions, you need special permits to get to those waterways. However, we still fight for and know of a lot of our sacred areas, burials, where the remains and things are at. So if there's development that's coming in the area, we're right there on top of that to see to it that those lands stay protected. And we try to do the best we can. Or if we might take canoe trips down some of our streamways where we know there are burials and or remains. Then we stop to, make sure we put those tobacco
Yeah.
downs and maybe clean up the area, or see if we see, just to keep an eye on different things. We don't have much say as far as being able to directly protect a lot of things, just because we don't own those.
Yeah.
Everything's owned besides us, but we're right there to try to be sure that nothing damages those areas.
Yeah.
We have agreements with the state of New Jersey that, like PSE&G, telephone companies,
Wow.
whenever they're having new developments coming in, if they're putting up cell towers, if they're putting up anything, those plans have to come to our community first.
Wow.
So they say,
Yeah.
hey, do you have anything in this area that's of significance besides the land itself? Is there anything of here that's of significance that we should be known of, or that we
Yeah.
need to protect? And those are sent to our tribal councils, and we review those before we send them back for approvals. Yeah, so that's an agreement that we have
Wow.
to help protect some of the sites.
Yeah, even for us, the airspace. We have, like within the area, they want to put up an airport. We can sign a contract, an agreement for them not to fly over our lands in any direction. They have to go around us.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, because what's happened is our village, because of its age, we're on the UNESCO World Heritage. And so they have to follow those guidelines as well because of how old they are, the buildings, and structurally, the vibrations from the planes
Yeah.
So that
shake
helps.
them. Yeah, so it helps
That's great.
to keep us together.
A lot of Euro-American people kind of say, oh, wampum, yeah, that's money. Isn't that money, Indian money? No, it's not. Because us Native people, it's sacred to us, although money is sacred to y'all. Wampum is sacred to us, and not in a way of money, of economics. But when the Europeans came here, the colonizers came here, they didn't have the money that they had in Europe. So understanding the sacredness and the rarity of wampum and how important it was to us Native people, they started using it as money. Wampum is an anglicizing of an Algonquian word that means shell, or the color of the shell. Wampum is from the clam that's called mercenaria, or it's called in colloquial terms, it's a hard-shelled clam, also known as a quahog. And in that clam, there's only, and many of you probably have seen quahog clams, especially if you eat clams or have chowder, you see that little bit of purple in there. And that's the part that we, today, really like to get. To us Native people, especially us Native people here in the Northeast, it's sacred to us. It's a sacred material, and it's used to denote important things. For example, if the clan mothers are deciding that there's going to be a new sachem, people call chiefs, if there's going to be a new sachem, they would lay a wampum belt on him, and if he accepted the wampum belt, he accepted the position of being a sachem. Or if you were going to get married, they would be wampum exchanged between the families. Or if you had signed a treaty, there would be wampum belts. There's these George Washington wampum belts and things like that. These all stated the sacredness of what was going to happen. To make it, this is wampum, and to make it, it's pre-colonial times. It was extremely difficult. We would use sand and sticks and stones to drill holes in the shell in order to make these beads. And so you could understand how important it would be if you had wampum, because of the way it's manufactured, how difficult it is. And as you're making these beads, of course, many of them will break as you're trying to drill them, and especially drilling them with the sand and with a stick and or rocks. You can still get the clams because they are farming those clams, but the purple's not in it. Because something in the water is what creates that purple in the clam. And and that's a little section that's a little thicker and it's easier to make beads out of. And the polluting of the water, the oceans, the clams weren't reproducing, and the ones that reproduced weren't producing the purple in the clam.
So my name is Wayasti, and my daughters here I have Heart Rose and Star Bear. Heart is 6 years old, Star is 4, and they are dressed in what's called a lady's fancy shawl outfit. So they have the shawls around their back. There's a story that talks about this dance that they'll do. A long time ago, there was a young woman who was sad because of a lost one. And for a long time, she carried her shawl and she wrapped herself up and completely covered herself in that shawl while she was in mourning. And then one day, she came out of that mourning like a butterfly coming out of its cocoon and started dancing around at one of the festivals or one of the events. And started dancing around very happy, like she was relieved, or she had gotten through that sadness. And it created what we call the shawl dance, or sometimes a lot of people like to refer to it as the butterfly dancers because of the way they wear their shawls and that story that reminds you of the butterfly coming out of the cocoon. So right now we're going to have Heart and Star show you a young lady's fancy shawl dance. It's all about their fancy footwork and fancy spinning and flashing their beautiful outfits. I'll explain a little bit about the drum. The drum that we use that we're using right now is a frame, a round frame that has a hide that is stretched over it. And the sounding of that hide, the representation of that hide, and that sound that you hear of that drum, it represents our heartbeat. So in our music, all of our beats, it's 1, 2. Just like your heart. Not that drum beat completely has no meaning to us. It's not used for anything. It's only good for Hollywood and on TV. So, but for us, that drum beat, it represents that heartbeat of the Mother Earth. And we believe that the earth is alive and it provides for us. That's why we call it the Mother Earth. We have another type of drum that we use, which is called a water drum. This drum, pretty much, it has that same meaning of that heartbeat representation, but it goes a little bit deeper. There's a story that talks about how when Sky Woman came from up above in the sky world, when she fell down to Turtle Island, one of the animals that assisted her along her way offered himself, as he passed away, offered himself and his hide to create this drum for all the animals, to attract them, to get their attention, to know that she was of good purpose. And that actual animal was a muskrat. A muskrat. And inside the drum, there's water. Without the water, the drum has no sound. So that water plays in part to that animal, being a water animal. We use this type of drum mostly in the longhouse or ceremonies, but mostly in longhouse for socials and stuff like that. We use this type of drum. This is this is something that you would find on the East Coast. Out west, you find these types of drums more with the hides on them. Our daughters have created their own songs by taking kids' tunes and creating songs, switching them over into native versions. So maybe you'll recognize part of this tune if you hear it. Ready, girls? Okay, ready, go back. And loud, okay? Hanging